Hi everyone, welcome to Explicitly Pro-Life. I'm Kristan Hawkins, and I have a very special guest today, Charlotte Pence. Welcome, Charlotte.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so Charlotte and I are going to talk about some personal things because in case you don't know, she is the daughter of the Vice President of the United States of America, Mike Pence, my hero. But we're also going to talk, not just about your personal life, but we're also going to talk about a very important subject of how to talk to your friends who are pro-choice and how do you kind of keep that respect and dialogue and that openness going. Charlotte went to a pretty liberal college, so I was thinking you probably have a lot of pro-choice friends, right?
Yes. I think most of my friends are pro-choice, definitely that I went to college with. So,
yeah. So perfect. Okay. So, but before we get started, let's talk about you. You are newly married.
Yep.
Charlotte, thankfully, came to the National Pro-Life Summit. If you weren't there, you make sure you sign up for next year. But I was really panicked when you announced over Instagram you're engaged because I was like, oh no, she still has to come to the summit. But you did, thankfully.
Yeah.
You got married over Christmas?
Yeah, I got married over Christmas on December 28th. So we did that because my husband's in the military. So it's kind of hard to like pick a date that they're going to be here and that they're not going to be like deployed or busy. And so a lot of people get married around that time. And it actually is the same day my brother got married 3 years before. So he's also in the military. So that's how it worked
awesome.
out. Yeah.
So now you're a military wife,
yes,
right? And Henry's in Navy.
Yes.
Okay, in the Navy. That's right, because he went to Naval Academy. Okay, so sorry. But what is it that I guess I was asking you a little bit before? Like, what are you doing? Like, what does the vice president's daughter do all day?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's funny. I'm in grad school right now, but I'm taking like semester to like be married and kind of get settled before my husband deploys. And so honestly, right now it's a lot of doing kind of speaking events, writing, kind of figuring out what my steps will be like post graduation. So I'll graduate about this time next year, and want to be writing and speaking and speaking out about issues that I care a lot about. And so this is kind of like preparation for that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's actually how I read a couple of your articles in the Washington Times. You did an article about abortion and social justice issues.
Yep.
And so I was like, oh my gosh, the vice president's daughter is writing. This is like our messaging. So I got super excited.
Yeah.
I like emailed to everyone. I was like, you guys, look, she's using our messaging. You probably came up with your own, but I was like, this is great. We're in sync. And so you're writing kind of about abortion, but you've written about other things as well. You have 2 books about the bunny, right?
Yeah, we have 3. We just had a third one come out. Christmas book. It was like over Christmas.
What was your bunny's name?
Marlon Bundo.
Marlon Bundo. I had a bunny, but her name was Florence.
That's so cute.
So have you written these books with your mom?
Yeah. So I write them and she illustrates. So she's a really talented watercolor artist.
I know. I got a Christmas
So we'll kind of do that. Yeah. I mean, she does all the Christmas cards. It's like incredible. So we've kind of done them together, which is really fun.
That's so great. So you have 3 books. And it's all about the bunny and his adventures, right?
Yeah, the first one was about a day in the life of the vice president. And so that one we were just kind of wanted to do a book with our bunny because his Instagram account got really famous when we moved to DC. I started an Instagram account at Marlon Bundo.
Okay.
And the media went kind of insane because we had a bunny. And I guess that's like not common in certain areas, but like some areas of the US, like Indiana, it's like very common. And so anyway, there's like pictures of him coming off of like the like plane and everything. Aww. And so the media like literally did all these stories about our bunny. And so we kind of joked around and made an Instagram account and like it blew up. It was way more followers than me still. And so my mom and I were like, let's do a book and just trying to think about what the topic was going to be. We realized we had no idea what the role of the vice president was before we came into the role. And a lot of people probably didn't either. So we did that. We did one on the nation's capital, the monuments, and then we did one about Christmas time.
Okay, I saw the Christmas one.
Yeah, that was fun.
Is your bunny house trained like mine was?
Yeah.
See, you did
it's
it too?
Crazy. They can be trained.
Yes.
It's crazy. Yeah. They're very like neat and tidy, and they
are.
don't like.
Does he have a little litter box?
He has like a little like corners of his cage that he'll go in.
Yeah. See, when I was in college, I got my bunny,
Me too.
and it was like contraband, so had to hide. Had to hide her in my closet. Yeah, no, and she would like jump, and you would hear her like banging off of the thing because she would try to get out. But then I trained her, and so I had like a little litter box, and I did like you just picked up the little poop and you put it in, and she got it.
She'll do it,
and you have to watch the chewing though. I think there's like a dresser at Bethany College that has some nice bunny marks because she would chew, like she'd chew through like a phone wire. But then you know it's hard to discipline a bunny.
Right?
She would sleep with me. She would climb up on my bed. Like,
that's cute, actually.
Florence, yeah.
I had I had him in college for 2 weeks because I was doing a short film and I had a bunny in the film, and everybody was like, "Just change it to a turtle or something," and I was like, "No, it has to be a bunny." And so we just got him off of Craigslist, and we had him in my dorm for 2 weeks illegally, and then he moved down to my parents' house.
So is he in DC?
Yeah,
at the Naval Observatory.
Yeah,
at the Vice President's
he still lives there with all the pets and my parents.
He's a very charmed bunny.
Yes.
Okay, so you have 3 bunny books, and didn't somebody make fun of your bunny book?
Yes, John Oliver did a parody of the first one.
Okay.
So that came out on the same day that ours came out, and we did not know obviously that was going to happen. So that was the whole thing.
He got even more Instagram followers.
Yeah, and we, he was contributing to charities, and we also were contributing a portion of our proceeds to charities. My mom and I both had one. And so we were like, whatever, it sells more books and like more money goes to charity, so we're not upset about it.
It's just funny that like somebody would like parody your like children's book about your bunny.
It was a surprise. It was a shock, I have to say.
Okay. All right. So but then you wrote another book, a non-bunny book, non-illustrated, right?
Yes,
about your dad.
About my dad. Mm-hmm.
And it was kind of like lessons from, okay, in case you don't know, like I'm like a huge Mike Pence fan. So I don't actually fangirl over many politicians, like a lot of politicos in Washington, D.C. And there's probably like on one hand, the number of politicians that I love and I respect and I would trust with my children, and your dad's one of them. Yeah. So I was really excited to see like your book. So I was like, oh, it's so sweet because he's such a decent human being. I think that's like, it's hard when you're in DC sometimes, like you'll meet people and you're like, you are not at all how I thought you were going to be, and the way you treat your staff and like the way you're walking around and talking to people, and then you meet the vice president. He's just he's so precious. Yeah. But so the book what you did with your dad and these lessons, like what is it? What do you think were like a couple of the biggest ones?
I think that throughout the book I kind of go throughout just little lessons I've learned from him along the way, and it's about my childhood and growing up in a political family, but then it's also about the 2016 campaign trail, which I went on with my parents. So I was able to be on the road with them like almost the entire time.
All of the crazy.
Yeah. And it was right after I graduated college. So I was living at home and I was working and I was planning to move. And then the election happened like totally out of the blue. And so I went with them, and it was great because I learned a lot by watching them and watching him. I think like the biggest thing that my mom and dad both taught us as kids is to have big dreams and to go for them, but to bring your family with you. That was just a big theme growing up. Like we moved to DC, which most congressional families don't do. And then even just going on the campaign trail, and a lot of the campaign trail is pretty boring. Like you're kind of just sitting there, especially if you're me who doesn't have a job. And my dad, I think, literally years later, I realized this was probably on purpose and he was being like a good dad. He would like give me jobs, and he would like be like, I really need you to like, listen to my speech and take notes on it and give me feedback. And so I did. And I learned a lot about speaking, which I do now, professionally.
He's a very good public speaker.
Great public speaker. And just learned a lot about how to treat your staff too, just by watching them. So I'd say like just watching them has really taught me a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny because tonight at Cal Poly, where I'll be speaking, and I actually start off with talking about my dad and like the impact that he had on my life. And so that's what I loved about your book, because I was like, oh, that's, dads are very important.
Definitely.
And they teach very important lessons. So I really like that. Okay, so your dad's awesome. You have this amazing bunny who has this huge Instagram following. I had no idea. I'm going to have to follow.
Yeah, it's insane.
The other thing, before we get to our topic about how do we talk to our pro-choice friends, the question everyone will probably want to know is what it's like to be a vice president's daughter. What are the things you didn't know that you now know?
Yeah. It's funny. I mean, I think that the transition is probably the part where it's like really tricky and kind of hard, like especially with an election that's national election, like the presidency. There's literally a transition time, so there's like a month where you have a transition and you're switching administrations. And so I think like for me, that's something I didn't expect, and that was a big like growing time for me. And I think it helped me in general, like be able to be in times of transition in life in general, because everybody goes through times of transition, obviously. Like you don't have to be the vice president's kid, but those times are really hard. Like I find, because I'm an impatient person, so I like to like not be waiting for something to happen. And so I think that was probably like the thing I probably didn't expect to be the trickiest part.
Because you're kind of in limbo then.
Definitely.
Kind of waiting for decisions to be made and someone to...
And we were living in a house in Maryland that we rented, and it was just like weird because then we couldn't really like leave the house a lot. And like if we did, like, we had security, which that's another probably the biggest transition thing, is having security with you. Is just it's just weird when you're kind of a private person.
You never had that like when he was congressman or governor. Did you ever have?
I didn't.
Okay.
My parents did when he was governor, but not, you don't as a congressman typically. So
unless
they
like
did
a threat or something, right?
Yeah, they did when he was governor. And then now obviously they do. And you do on the campaign trail. So like that's kind of weird too. You have to get used to it on the campaign trail. But that was definitely weird for me, I think. Okay. Yeah. But I don't know. At the end of the day, it's like, I mean, it's like I'm the vice president's daughter, but I'm just like my dad and mom's daughter. So I like this will end. Like he won't be vice president forever. And
let's hope he.
So
seeks higher office is what I'm saying.
Maybe? Man, I don't know. But I mean, that's the cool thing about just our political system.
What's I guess the best part beyond just having a great mom and dad?
The best part is definitely being able to meet so many people and kind of be able to like plug into things, I think, that you might not be able to otherwise. Like I've been able to travel with them to a lot of countries. We went on like the Asia like swing a couple years ago, which was insane. Like you were literally in like a country like a day. And so doing that was amazing experience. I mean, all the people you meet, especially the campaign trail for me was really awesome because I think I would have been surprised by the results of the election if I had not been on the campaign trail.
I know. That's why DC and all the national media couldn't understand it. They couldn't understand it. And I was like, have you not been talking to people?
I know. And I was in Chicago at the time. Like I had just graduated from school in Chicago. So I was in a pretty major like liberal city. And then I went on the campaign trail and went to, like 4 states a day sometimes. We're like going all over the place. And that was where it was really cool just to go to places that I had not been before and might not have gone to, and just meet people in like everyday America. And I know it's what my dad loves about campaigning. I mean, he loves campaigning.
That's what I love about my job. Because I go to like middle of nowhere in a state. I'll speak for a pregnancy crisis center for a banquet, and I meet somebody and they're like, oh, I saw your video, I read this, and everyone has these incredible stories of like how they got involved in the pro-life movement, and I don't know, I like the change and like being able to see different parts of the country, but then hearing how all these people who are so different and unique and have their own stories have kind of come together around like this one cause. I would imagine it's similar to a political campaign.
It's definitely similar. Absolutely. Yeah.
I think that's really cool. And I like that you like that part, because I can imagine a lot of people probably don't like that, going to four places in a day. I like think of things as challenges. Like I hold the record as a fillet. Like I flew into Houston one day, then went to Austin and San Antonio, and ended up in Dallas that night.
Oh my gosh.
And one day, baby.
Wow.
I took a 6 a.m. out of Dallas the next morning. So I always brag about that, because everyone's like, you can't do it. I'm like, I'm going to do it. We're going to. I even stopped at like the Magnolia thing in Waco at 2 a.m. We went to Taco Cabana. So there's nothing open. Drove around. Yeah.
Waco's on my list. I gotta go there.
It
seems so cool.
It looked really cool at 2 a.m. I've never like gone in. Now they have like a restaurant too.
Yeah, coffee shop.
It was just when it was like the silos, like doing the silos, and they had a shop. But yeah, it looked really cool at 2 a.m. So
make a trip.
There you go. Well, maybe on the you can hit the campaign trail. Texas is going to be an interesting place.
Yeah.
So
I've heard that.
It's on like the target list, and I know we're going to be organizing students in Texas, and they're all like. I'm like, yes, Texas is. Yeah,
it's in play.
It's gonna be. Or do you think you're gonna get on the campaign trail this summer?
I don't know. I've thought about it. I think like I will go to some things for sure. I mean, I definitely want to be at the debate and the convention and things like that.
I can't wait for the
kind
debate.
Of be as it goes.
That's like the only reason I still pay for the. I don't have cable, but we have like DirecTV now, like the app. And I'm like, these debates, these Democratic debates, are like the only reason I still pay for that.
Yeah,
because I'm like, I would miss all this fun.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah.
Great.
I've been trying to like live tweet. I'm like, we need to record me during the debates, because I just think it'd be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But okay, so let's talk about our talk. I had to ask you the personal stuff because you're the vice president's daughter and people have gotten mad. But let's get to the real work. So this is an issue that I think, a time when I talk to students, especially a lot of our student leaders who are just kind of getting into the pro-life movement, it's something that they're struggling with, because, they've started a Students for Life group. They've kind of like raised their hand. They're standing up for life on campus. And that comes at a personal cost, especially if you're a student who maybe previously hasn't been very vocal about your beliefs and your opinions. Then all of a sudden you're like, and especially if you go to like, I went to a small school, like as soon as I raised my hand, I was like the poster child for like every conservative cause ever, even if I had no idea what the issue was. And so I know this is something a lot of folks struggle with, and especially to, even older folks of, my neighbor and I have been friends for years. And then now this election's coming up, and a lot of issues are going to be talked about, and abortion's going to be, it's going to be a key issue, because President Trump has, fulfilled all these promises to the pro-life movement. Your dad is like, pro-life hero. And we know, every Democrat running is an extremist on abortion. So it's going to come up. And I've been kind of warning people, like, if you're someone who doesn't like controversy, it's really 2020 isn't going to be your year. Like, you're not going to want to watch TV, don't watch the news. And it's going to be, anytime you get together the family, this is going to be something that's talked about. So I think this is a good conversation for us to have, is how do you, what do you, like you said earlier that you have a lot of pro-choice friends. You went to this very liberal kind of Catholic school in Chicago. How have you found the best way to maintain your friendship with pro-choice friends?
I mean, I think that honestly, I don't know. I think a big part of it is being okay with like being pro-life and talking about it, because I think that it's easy to be pro-life and kind of be private about it, or be pro-life and kind of only have friends in that area, because it is such a divisive thing, especially on campuses. But I think that kind of keeping to your own group is the wrong move. Sometimes you definitely need a support system.
That's true.
So don't get me wrong. You need that. But
that's why you have a Students for Life group, because they're your support system.
Exactly. Have friends that agree with you and will back you up. But at the same time, don't be afraid to connect with people on other things. And then, when you build that relationship, and then there's trust there, then you can start to talk about your beliefs, and it will come up. I mean, it will come up. It comes up. Girls talk about this kind of thing. And so you can kind of challenge one another without being controversial or being, really confrontational, I think. It's hard to do though, but I think that it's almost the walk the walk thing. Like if you come across as someone who is super in your face and confrontational and mean about these issues, no one's going to talk to you about it and no one's going to come to you with questions. Whereas, you find, I think, that a lot of people who are just talking about this, like, are kind of on the fence about the pro-choice, pro-life thing, but they don't really want to be associated with pro-life people and they don't really want to be associated with pro-choice people. So they just kind of like don't talk about it. And so then if you are pro-life and just are kind of out that you're pro-life, they can come talk to you and ask you questions. And I think they will. Yeah.
No, I mean, I found that on my campus. I went to a very liberal, like a Protestant campus, and it was very small. So once I started my pro-life group, like everyone knew, like I was fully out of the closet. And so I would have people come up to me, especially like when there was something political going on in one of the poli-sci classes, or there was like a speech class, I think one time they were debating abortion. So everyone came, and, I was like the crazy person who had like the fetal models in the truck of my car. So I was like, oh, here, let me show you. But you had to come across, as someone who's approachable. I think what you said is very key.
Yeah.
And I think it's hard. We have a training at Students for Life. It's DBW, and it's don't be weird.
Yeah.
Because I think it's hard. Like when you finally grasp it and you understand like the injustice that's happening every single day inside Planned Parenthoods, inside abortion facilities, like you're like, how did I not know? Like everybody needs to know this information. So you get like super on fire. And then you get like one where you're pulling t-shirts and you're pulling bumpers stickers, but it's like, how do you do that in a way where you still come across as approachable and you don't come across as like pro-life robot or pro-life crazy person. And I know from experience, I kind of think I came across as pro-life crazy person sometimes, especially when I got really, because I get super passionate about things. So, and I'm, as you can tell, I'm not really afraid to talk to people. So, it was like, how do you do that in a winsome way? How do you do it, with grace?
Yeah. I think also you can ask people like why they're pro-choice. You know what I mean? And not be like, ask them in a real way that you actually want to know and you actually want to understand. Because I think that a lot of times, like, it's easy to kind of write abortion off as evil because it is evil. But the people that are pro-choice, and I think because I have friends and family members that are pro-choice, you understand, like, once you get to know them, okay, they have reasons. Yeah, they have reasons that they think this is the right thing. Like, they really think that. And they're not, completely comfortable with it, I don't think. So once you kind of understand where they're coming from, and then you can kind of talk to them also about their vulnerabilities once they open up, because I think people do, they have, like, a lot of my friends will say, I'm pro-choice, but I might have gotten an abortion earlier in my life, but I wouldn't at this point in my life because I'm an adult and I have a job and I need to be responsible for my choices. But if I was 16, I would have. And I think that would have been okay. Without understanding that there's so much emotional trauma you would have gone through at such a young age, physical trauma, definitely. And, obviously it's still a life. It's still a life no matter what age you are, that you're taking. And so I think that once you kind of get at the cracks, because there's always like a little crack when a pro-choice person, I believe, is talking to you. And usually has to do with the morality, because they know, I'm not totally comfortable with it. They know in their gut.
Yeah. And that's what, like, I always try to get at, like, how do you feel about it, right?
Yeah.
And then just instinctively, I mean, you have some people who are just very hurt and lost and will scream and yell at you. And I mean, they're like the 9%, right? But then everybody else is like in this like uncomfortable position of, I don't really like abortion. I'm not comfortable with it. I don't want to be seen as like advocating for it. But also, I don't want to be seen as like a pro-life extremist, because that's taking a side, that's judging people. And so I think especially with I don't know, people our age, it's, having an extreme position, having a position on anything is considered a negative.
Definitely. It definitely is. And I think that it's because a lot of times too, once it's an interpersonal relationship, people say, well, I have a friend that got an abortion, so I'm not like pro-choice, but I'm not going to like tell her that she's a terrible person or that she shouldn't have been able to do that. And so I think that it does come down to those personal relationships, which you can then be the personal relationship in their life that's pro-life, that's saying, well, actually there's other options for you.
No, I think that's a very valid point, because if you had a friend you love that's had an abortion, you're never going to want to, you might be like, even if you have that pro-life leaning sympathy, you're not going to want to call yourself pro-life, because how they view pro-lifers is judgmental, right? So if they would call themselves pro-life, they don't want their friend to think, I'm judging you for your past abortion decision.
Exactly.
But I think that's, I always tell people, like, especially when students ask me this question, I'm like, try to find ways to talk about it. If there was a debate on TV, election year is a great way to talk, I think, to your friends about abortion, because it's going to be talked about. But if there's something going on, be like, did you see that story? How did you feel about that? Kermit Gosnell, when Kermit Gosnell's House of Horrors was discovered in Philadelphia, that abortion facility, that, I bet you, that horrific story made so many pro-lifers, because people started paying attention. There was conversations like, oh, I'm okay with abortion, but I'm definitely not okay with what he was doing to women. And if I'm not okay with, and so I think anytime it's in the news, and that's the other thing I always try to tell students, is that helped me understand of, like, I didn't have to win. I'm not like, I don't have to like win the argument. Like, all I have to do is kind of plant that seed of truth, especially if it's my friend. I'm going to probably have more conversations with them and kind of let it percolate.
Yeah, exactly. And I think too, with the election, there is more conversation about it, because like we were saying, that all the Democratic candidates right now are extremely pro-choice. And I think people are looking at it, and people that are kind of in the middle are realizing that they have to look at the extreme of either side, and they're not really comfortable with the extreme pro-choice side. And so I think that that's an opportunity where you can welcome people into the movement and say, this is something that is a human rights issue, and it's gonna be what history is gonna look back at us on. I think so. So I think once you start talking to people that way, and without judgment too, then you can kind of welcome people in, because a lot of times, and there's so much more research now being done on this, but women who've had abortion have a lot of like emotional trauma that they go through, and to just be pro-life, I think sometimes, not maybe a woman that's had an abortion, but a friend of hers sees a pro-life person and kind of like gets defensive of their friend, because they're like, you don't understand like what she went through. And the truth is that we do understand, and we're trying to, be better about reaching out to those people when they need it.
Yeah, that's, something I was trying to get across today on the campus when the mob kind of surrounded me, was I was like, don't you think there's maybe a better way, and maybe a less drastic option to alleviate her suffering and her child's potential suffering, which you're assuming is a given, than to kill? It's almost, it's a very, where we have hope, they have despair almost. Yeah. It's a very sad kind of worldview of like, you don't understand like the life she's living, the life her child's gonna live. It's just better off to kill it and I'm like, kill, and it's very sad, because I'm like, I'm hopeful for a better world, and I'm not saying it's always going to be great, but like, that's our mission, is to make it a better world. So yeah, I think what you said though about how they feel uncomfortable, I think that's why it's important. Like, we've had this discussion before with students for life groups of like, do we let people into our club who may not be 100% with us.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm always like, I wouldn't let them run like as officers, I guess, but you want as many people to your club meetings and participating and just starting to kind of surround you and be around you. Because I think once you become friends with someone and build a relationship, you're going to be more likely to kind of listen and actively listen to what they're saying and think about it. But then I also think it's important because you have all these people who are generally uncomfortable with it. And so it's like, no, you can join it. You come to our club meeting. If you disagree with me and you believe abortion in case of sexual assault is totally morally justified, I'm not going to say you can't be a member of our club. Like, come, and I think, I don't know, I always think of pro-life as a spectrum. It's like, you got pro-abortion here and sold out 100% pro-life. And I actually think the sold out 100%, the hardest thing is to get that person to admit they're like a pro-life first voter. Like I'm a single issue proud voter.
Yeah.
But you have a lot of people in the middle or they're kind of moving over. But I think it's a journey. Like I even know like me becoming pro-life. I was pro-life, but then this exception. And then I got in the movement. I'm like, oh, wait a minute. I can't take that position.
Yeah.
But it wasn't that no one, the pregnancy center said, well, you can't volunteer for us unless you're 100% on every single, and I've seen that a lot in the pro-life movement.
Yeah.
Of like, you can't volunteer at our pregnancy center unless you're 100% on every single, I'm like, if they can volunteer in the like baby clothes room and sort clothes and you're not saying you're talking to women, but they can serve and kind of be around the pro-life movement.
Right. And see it from the inside and kind of be around those people too that are going to have conversations with them that might kind of lead them further on. Because I think it does start small. Like you're saying, it starts with an idea in your mind of thinking like a gut feeling. I don't think that's totally right. And then once you get like more involved in it, then it becomes more normal. And I think that's kind of where the pro-life movement I think is going, is like, and needs to go, is making it a normal thing to be pro-life because of the media and Planned Parenthood, it seems like everyone's pro-choice and not everyone is. Like not everyone is. A lot of people are not okay with it. And I think that they just feel like they can't talk about it. But to make it normalized, I think is an important step. And
that's why we have like the whole like pro-life generation brand.
Yeah.
And that was one of the things I actually picked up from reading Saul Alinsky, Rules from Radicals, of power isn't what you necessarily have, it's what your enemy thinks you have, of saying, no, we're the majority and we're the pro-life generation, and having young, joyful faces out there, of normalizing it, of making it cool to be pro-life. And I think that's really important. Sometimes I get disagreements with amazing people in the pro-life movement because they're like, no, Kristan, we're losing. All of your messaging is that we're winning, and from what I see is we're losing, and we need to tell you're not telling people the truth. I'm like, well, yeah, we lose a lot, but we're also winning a lot. And I'm like, people like winning causes. Like, are you going to keep saying we're losing? And there's not going to be a lot of people who want to join a bunch of losers. Like,
right.
So everyone probably ran out to buy like Kansas City stuff after the Super Bowl this year. Like, no one had Kansas City merch before that.
Yeah.
I just, I think we have to be strategic about how we're positioning ourselves. But it's hard. I've had a conversation with different folks, and it's, you almost, because you join the pro-life movement, you expect persecution, and if you're a Christian, if you're a believer, you're expecting persecution. So it's like, well, if I'm getting persecuted, then I'm doing something right. That's awesome, right? And like, I don't mind if someone like vandalizes something of ours or is mean to us, because that means we're kind of breaking through.
Yeah.
But at the same time, if like that's all that's ever happening, it makes me very nervous that we're not actually converting. What's been has there been any point when you've had conversations with your pro-choice friends or family members, has there ever been anything that you found that was particularly like you felt like moved them the most or moved them closer the most?
I really think that it goes back to kind of asking them questions, because I think that when I've gotten in conversations, and sometimes they're heated, it's not like all like just perfect, like sitting over coffee talking about abortion.
But you're so calm. You're very Midwestern calm.
I mean, it can be, intense. And so I think that asking them questions about it, when is it not okay? That is can be really powerful, because there's just always a point where it's not okay. And there's always a point where you can't. I mean, the thing is, I remember being in like third grade, and I went to a Christian school, but it was mixed politically. And I remember this kid was talking about how, it's a baby isn't it's not a baby until it's born.
I had a biology student tell me that today on campus.
Really? Okay. Yeah. Wow. Still a thing.
Yeah.
And I remember that was a big like scientific question at the time, was like, is it like breath that's life and that kind of a thing? Is it a heartbeat? And like now, like our science really just completely debunks that. Like and even pro-choice people that at least I've talked to never really say that. Like they never really say like, well, it's not a human being, because like everybody like kind of knows that it is, and they're like okay with it because of this other thing, this other human that we care more about. So really it comes from a place of caring for the woman. Like I actually believe that they're worried about this pregnant woman who doesn't know what she's going to do. But so are we. Like we're also worried about her, and we know that, having an abortion is long term, like it's not going to be the best thing for you. And like you've said a lot, and I've said as well, like the message is just so depressing, and it's a message of defeat. It is. It's the pro-choice message is saying you can't do it.
You're not strong enough.
Get away. Yeah, just get rid of it. And and it's even, I mean, that's a message from celebrities, like even especially this year, like we've seen multiple celebrities come out and say like, if I didn't have an abortion, I wouldn't be where I am today. And it's like, what a sad thing to think about yourself.
Anti-feminist thing to say.
Very anti-feminist, anti-woman. But also like to think that about yourself makes me really sad, honestly. It really makes me sad to think that you live with something and you have this amazing life, and you think, oh, I had to do this thing that was maybe hard and maybe a difficult choice, but I wouldn't have this amazing life if I hadn't done that. And I don't think that that's really a choice. That's just putting yourself into a box and not really giving yourself credit.
Yeah, no, I was kind of studying out for my speech tonight, and I was looking at some of my notes. I did a couple of podcasts with a friend of mine, Camille Pauly from Healing the Culture. I don't know if you listened to that one, but Healing the Culture is a really incredible organization, and they talk about these 4 levels of happiness, right? And these like, the very low levels and the high levels of happiness. But it's very much of this notion of like, I deserve happiness. I can get happiness however I want. And so I was having this conversation today on campus, and I was like, I understand that, and you might feel temporary happiness, but is this like ultimately like going to make you happy? Like, is this destroying another person and knowing you had to destroy another person? Is that going to make you happy? When have you been happiest in your life? And I was trying to get, I eventually was asking about sacrifice. I said, well, is it when you're serving other people, maybe? Yeah. Like that you feel like the best about yourself, this fulfillment, this self-fulfillment? Yeah. And like, well, yeah. I'm like, well, that's what the pro-life movement's asking of her. It's sacrificing 9 months of your life and comfortable living for someone else to be able to breathe, to live 90 years, right? Yeah. And it's, no one's saying it's easy, right, but we think she's capable of it. Like she can actually do, she's noble enough to choose someone else's life over her comfort. Because I mean, that's what I've been trying to get with the students. And I was testing out some new messaging today about like, there's life and there's liberty and there's property, and like abortion pits those rights against each other, liberty and life. Yeah. But like, your liberty is impacted, especially, if you weren't planning, if this was a one-night stand, or God forbid this was an act of sexual assault, you didn't ask for this, but yet your liberty is being in conflict with someone else's life.
Right.
And so it's like when those rights are in conflict, how do you I was trying to talk to the students about, like hierarchy of rights. Like, you can't have liberty without your life.
Right.
I mean, it's like Dred Scott. I was thinking about Dred Scott because in the Supreme Court, and there's a lot of talk about the Supreme Court, and that's why the election is so important. You have to vote pro-life first.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm not trying not to get too political because I don't know what you can or cannot say, but
say whatever.
Okay. Well, because she's the vice president's daughter. No, the Dred Scott decision. It talking about the hierarchy of rights. It was put property over someone else's liberty, and that's how it was like fundamentally disordered. It was. I don't know, because I've been thinking about the Roe decision, because Roe said, well, your autonomy, your liberty is higher than someone else's life, and how that's disordered.
Yeah.
But yeah, I know I've been trying to test out different messaging for, like, we're doing this. I told you we're doing this big study for how to market online and have his conversions of truly in the middle people. But it's very difficult because they already know it's wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that there's also, we've talked about this, like the, feeling of, like, I think a lot of millennials feel this way, that you can't really tell someone that what's wrong. Like, you can think it's wrong, but like, don't put that on somebody else. But I think that the more we talk about it and make it normal, the more that people will feel comfortable doing that. And I just remember, like, my dad, he used to speak to groups about abortion and pro-life issues, and he would say, if you are like a woman who's in this crisis pregnancy situation, I can't guarantee, that if you have an abortion, you will regret it in the future. Some people do, some people say that they don't. But pretty much every single woman that you will meet that had a child, gave it up for adoption or kept it or whatever they decided to do, never regrets that decision. And I can almost guarantee you won't regret that. And yeah, it's the harder choice, but the harder choice is often the right choice.
That's right.
And it's hard because also it's not normalized and it's not popular in our culture. And that's,
to make sacrifice for someone else.
Yeah. And it's just like, for people to be talking about like the Shire abortion movement and things like that, like, not only is it celebrating it, but it's almost telling you, like, if you have a child and you didn't have an abortion, then you'll almost be judged for that in some way, in some circles, I think, because it's kind of like, well, why didn't you get an abortion?
There is a lot of judgment on that.
Terrible. Yeah, it's terrible. And it's way, it's going back against, women's rights, and even in the workplace and things like that, like to have this option to not be pregnant, to not have to go on maternity leave, just creates a lot of, I think, a lot of complications with that. But I don't know. I do think it's becoming more normal to talk about pro-life issues. I think because it's such a hot topic right now in so many different states, especially because of Roe versus Wade, especially because of this election. I mean, all of the Democratic candidates.
Your dad might have had something to do with saying he wants Roe versus Wade to be on the ash heap of history.
Says it a lot. I mean, all the Democratic candidates want to codify Roe v. Wade, which makes it into law. I mean, that's a huge deal that, like, not a lot of people are even talking about. I feel like, yeah, they're pro-choice and yeah, they're for, like, basically infanticide, but they also want to make it into law, which would totally change just the dynamic of the country.
And force you to pay for it.
Yeah.
How do you think, with your pro-choice friends and family, how do you think, I don't have a lot of pro-choice friends and family anymore. The more I get into the pro-life movement, my one cousin, like, I sometimes see, because of the algorithm on, like, Facebook and social media, it almost makes you, like, kind of fall out of relationship with those who disagree with you, because I try to follow every student's life group across the country. So my Facebook feed is just like pro-lifers all day long.
Yeah.
I always know, like, everything before anyone else does, because I see it. And my staff's always like, how did you do that? I'm like, I don't know. It's just the algorithm. And so I feel like I've actually fallen out of relationship with some of my more liberal leaning or pro-choice friends and family, not because we had any, like, falling out. It was just, I don't see them as much on Facebook because I'm only getting everyone else's pro-life updates. But how do you think, what do you think they're thinking of, like, this kind of extremism that's going on in the Democrats right now? Like, do you think that's helping them? Because I don't think it is. But do you think, like, is it converting, or is it making your kind of pro-choice friends kind of going, oh, maybe I will vote for your dad because I might not want to, but I will,
Yeah, I don't know. I think that honestly, I think that it needs to be more of a topic that like Republicans are talking about for the election, because
Thank you.
it is definitely, it's a huge issue. And I think honestly, I think a lot of pro-choice people kind of just like want to ignore it a little. Even if you're pro-choice and you know this candidate is more pro-choice than you, maybe more extreme. And then you're like, okay, but I agree with them on everything else, so it's fine. But you're not realizing that that's like the extreme position doesn't represent most pro-choice people's beliefs, I think.
That's right.
Most moderates' beliefs, definitely not. And so I think that there's kind of a middle ground there that can definitely be found. And like I watched my dad in CPAC today, and he was saying that, if you are a pro-life Democrat, like, come on in, like, water's warm, like, you can join us, like, you don't have to, feel strongly about every single issue, but this could be the issue for this election. Like, this could be the tipping point if we really got people talking about it, because the extremes are so wild.
Can I just take you all around DC and you can tell? Because I was at a very high level meeting the other day, and I was like, it was really funny because I'm like generally in my circle, maybe it's just a circle of Students for Life, I'm known as like the stodgy old Republican conservative. Like I'm like you want the traditional Republican, go see Kristan. And I'm in this room, and I was like coming across as like the raging liberal, because I was like, okay, there's this thing called Democrats for Life. I said, I know we've had vehement disagreements about Obamacare. I'm still very angry about what they did to us in Obamacare. However, Kristan like got Pete Buttigieg on record, like saying that she wasn't welcome in the party. We got to do something with these people. Like they're hungry, and they've basically been told they should go extinct. And in fact, if the Democrats would prevail and there would be a Democratic president win from this current slate of candidates, that would essentially make all pro-life Democrats extinct. I mean, there would be no discussion anymore. Yeah. So I'm like, we've got to like go after it. And I don't know, I'm like from West Virginia, but I was like, all my family were Democrats. I got most of them are Republican now, but like not all, but like we got to go to these Rust Belt states and get people like excited and like understand just how extreme it is.
I saw something, I think it was about South Carolina, and it was just like on the news about how they were interviewing people who were pro-life Democrats, and a lot of them were planning on like sitting out like the election completely, because they just were like, well, all the Democrats are telling me that I can't be a Democrat unless I'm like for infanticide. And then I'm on the other side of this, and I'm not really Republican either. And so I think you have to vote. And also, think about what the ramifications like really are going to be, because I mean, appointing more justices to the Supreme Court, possibly appointing judges. I mean, that makes a lot of impact on the pro-life side. Yeah.
I mean, the Ninth Circuit just flipped.
Yeah, and it really gives the states power, though. Like that's really what it's doing. It's allowing states to decide, and then we take it to states and we, try to make change there. Whereas on the Democrat extremist liberal side, it's really like a federal law oversweeping. Everybody has to agree.
And 65%, the poll we released last year, 65% of millennials said that they felt they should have a voice on their state abortion laws. Yeah. And I think that's a talking point that we should be using and talking about. Like they may not be with us on abortion, but they feel like they should have a vote on that. Yeah. And we know, and this is, federalism, when those laws are made closest to the people, right? You can go and knock on your door of your delegate or your state senator because they live in your town, or you'll see them at church. And that's important. That holds them to be, more accountable to you for their actions rather than the senator who only really is in the state every 6 years.
Yeah.
It's a pretty sweet gig, by the way, to be a U.S. senator.
I mean, the federal funding question too, to Planned Parenthood, things like that, the federal law making abortion legal, that takes away, obviously, take away the voice of an unborn baby, but it takes away your voice as a voter. I mean, it really does. And I think that these kinds of issues that are really, really delicate. And when we've talked about it, even today, like talking about pro-choice people who have good reasons for being pro-choice, I think it's better at the local level. It's just better to mesh it out. And that's where you can redirect funding to like crisis pregnancy centers and places that are going to help women provide, whatever resources they need. Instead of just having some blanket statement, the whole country, you just have to agree with us.
Yeah.
Which is what it would be.
Yeah. And one size fits all never looks good. It's like me trying to wear a one size fits all dress. It ain't pretty ever.
It's not America.
Yeah.
Like America is just so diverse. I mean, literally like you drive into a different state and it's like completely different. And so I think it's just going to create divisiveness, I think, if you try to have some oversweeping law that's extreme.
And that's what Roe did, right? They said, oh, it's settled law now, but then we never shut up. Like it's only gotten more, boisterous on our side. That's what's so great. And that's what's so great about Americans, because we're just really stubborn people.
Oh yeah. We don't stop. We don't stop talking.
And I think I get asked a lot from like, we have a national summit this year. There were a lot of international groups that came. So the Bishop of Sydney, Australia was there, and they had 30 young people that we've been kind of working with, the pro-life group there in Australia. And I get that question a lot of time from pro-lifers, like, what can we do? What have you guys done differently? I'm like, honestly, it's really hard for me to tell you, because we just refuse to quit. And so you guys have kind of shut up about it. Now you're trying to like revive, and that's going to be, you're going to be pressing. So I do think this election is going to be a good time to talk to your pro-choice friends and family and start those discussions and use the extremism of their side to make them feel even more uncomfortable. So Charlotte, thanks for coming on today. I really appreciate having you on. And then I'll be speaking here in like an hour or so.
Exciting.
So that's why I was asking. I was like, what's the security protocol? Because we all from the protesters, but we haven't told anybody you're coming. So that way you should be fine.
I'm used to the protesters.
Oh, that's true.
Hopefully I didn't draw. We won't draw any from me. But
all right. Well, thank you everyone for tuning in. Make sure you tell your friends about Explicitly Pro-Life. Make sure you hit subscribe and you share this all over the place. And you can tell your friends we're on Spotify, iTunes, YouTube, anywhere you get your podcast. Bye.